Okay. Welcome, everyone. Here we go. A new mini-series on water. We'll call it for right now the spiritual nature of water as part of fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut. And tonight we'll begin this mini-series with discussing the connection of water and the month of Elul. Now, when we get to the connection of water during the holidays of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Hoshanah, Rabbah, and Simchat Torah, the role of water is quite obvious. It is tangible. It's part of the prayers. It's part of our rituals, customs. But in the month of Elul, the connection with water is more hidden and more ethereal, but not less important, because Elul is the preparation for Rosh Hashanah. So if water is going to play a big part of the holidays of Tishrei, it makes sense that already in Elul, there will be an importance to water. But before we do that, let's just look at water in general. We're going to go deeper into this, but the idea of even calling this mini-series Water, Water Everywhere is one of the blessings we say in the morning is we bless Hashem, Roka ha'oretz al hamayim, that God stretched out the land upon the water. When we look at the planet, we look at the globe, the vast majority of the globe is made of oceans and seas. And the land actually is the minority. In the human body, so we're told at least that 90% of the human body is made up of water. Every cell is mostly water-based. So already, just between the body and the reality of the world, we see the importance of water. And we can add to it that nothing will grow without water. In other words, we would not have food to eat. Everything is dependent on water. And even though land obviously has a huge part of the planet, the minority, but if you look at societies around the world, 40% of the population of the world lives on a coast, on the ocean coast or a sea coast. 90%. In Israel, it's also true. If you take the whole population of Israel and then you look at how much of it lives on the coast of the Mediterranean, you'll have a majority of the population of Israel living on the coast. And this is true, of course, in the west coast of America and the east coast. That is the major population centers. But even more than that, if you look at virtually every country in the world, where cities are, will be near rivers, because people can't exist without water. So if you live not by a coast, you have to be able to get to water. So that's why if you look at cities all over the world, now not every country has a lot of rivers, but those countries that do have rivers, almost exclusively, the major cities will be on or near a river. So that just tells us the incredible importance of water. And as we will see in this mini-series, in the Torah, water plays a prominent place throughout the whole Torah. So that is the basis of the idea of doing a mini series on water. And as I said, because water plays such an important part of the upcoming Chagim. So tonight we're going to exclusively look at the connection of water to the month of Elul. So as I said, it's not obvious. It's not explicit. It's not right in front of us. But when we start looking deeply, well, here also we'll see water everywhere. So what are some of the allusions or hints to water in Elul? So first of all, the name of the month of Elul is made up of 4 letters, Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. That equals in Gematria 67. And 67 equals Bina, understanding. So here we have a general, very important hint about the month of Elul, because the month of Elul is the month of Tshuva. This is the month of introspection, meditation, making an accounting, improving our ways, New Year's resolutions. And that means Bina. Bina in the Gemara means to understand one thing inside another. In other words, looking beyond the superficial and looking deeper. But that's what we're called upon to do in the month of Elul, is to look at our lives, not in a superficial way, but really delve into where are we coming from? Where do we want to go? Are we on the right path? What have been our mistakes, our missed opportunities? What can we accomplish? How can we improve? That is what Bina is about. Bina is about understanding something within something else. And that entails looking in a deeper way at our lives. Now, both of these words, Elul and Bina, in what's called Mispar Katan, in small numerology, equal 13. So we're going to see how significant this is. Both of them equal 13. And this is connected to one of the ways that we call the month of Elul is the month of Rachamim, the month of compassion. Why is that? The main reason is one of the main components of Elul in Jewish tradition, ritual, and prayer is slichot. Slichot is call it a prayer service that we don't do the rest of the year, only in Elul. Some people also do it between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and continue slichot, but not everyone. But this is a once a year kind of thing. Sfardim begin already at the very beginning of Elul and say slichot for the entire month. Slichot are traditionally said either late at night or early in the morning. And every Beit Knesset, every yeshiva is involved in this. In Israel, virtually every single night, there will be thousands, if not tens of thousands of people at the Kotel doing slichot. Every yeshiva student, every seminary student, every religious high school, everyone is taken at least one time to the Kotel for slichot. The main part of slichot is the recitation of the 13 midot harachamim, the 13 attributes of compassion. So now already we see a connection. Elul in Mispar Katan equals 13, Bina equals 13, and the main component of the special aura of Slichot and Elul is the 13 Midot Rachamim. So here we have a connection, but now we'll ask, well, what does that have to do with water? So my answer is we're getting to it. We're getting to it. So the first thing we could say is in Kabbalah, the 13 midot of Rachamim are 13 channels that draw from Keter into Chachma and then the lower Sfirot. It's 13 channels drawing transcendent, infinite energy, especially Rachamim, compassion, into the world. And in Kabbalah and Chassidut, these 13 channels are compared to channels of water. That it's a metaphor, but that's the metaphor, just like we see a waterfall coming from above to below, bringing a flow of water, a flow of energy. And everyone knows how beautiful it is to stand by a waterfall. Small ones, big ones. It's always a thrill for the neshama to be in the presence of the waterfall. But as I said, throughout Kabbalah, the flow of energy from above to below through the 13 midot rachamim is compared to water, a flow of water into this world. Now, one of the hints we have of this is the 8th attribute of compassion is called Notzer Chesed La'alafim. God forms loving kindness for thousands, meaning for the multitudes. In other words, God's chesed is spread all over. And so it's explained that the first letters of these three words, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nun Chet Lamed, spell Nachal, a stream of water. So again, we have the metaphor of God's chesed flowing into the world. The alafim is like everywhere. And this is the metaphor of water. Now, I'll add that the number 13 is also very significant, especially in the teachings of Rav Ginsburg, because we always talk about 10 sfirot, but we know that there's 11 sfirot, because when we count Keter, we don't count Dat. Or if we count Dat, we don't count Keter, to maintain a system of 10. But Rav Ginsburg explains that in the inner dimension of the Sfirot, there are really 13 levels. Why? Because in the inner dimensions, we do count both Keter and Dat. And Keter has three, what are called the three heads. This is the language of the Zohar, three heads of Keter, which are called in the inner dimensions of the Sfirot, faith, pleasure, and will. Emuna, Ta'anug, and Ratzon. So Rav Ginsburg, for close to 50 years now, has been teaching, of course, with the usual model of the Sfirot of 10, but in many, many, many cases, it's 13 levels. And just like the 13 midot of Rachamim are envisioned as 13 channels through which an infinite God creates and maintains a finite world. So the Sefirot work just like the 13 Midot of Rachamim. And in a certain way, they're synonymous, they're parallel. The 13 Midot of Rachamim and the 13 inner dimensions of the Sefirot. Now we're going to add a very important component here, is that in the Hebrew letters, the 13th letter is the letter Mem. The letter Mem is the letter of Mayim. The word for water in Hebrew is Mem, Yud, Mem. Later, we're going to see the significance of the Yud between the Mem and the Mem. The first Mem is what's called an open Mem, because basically the Mem is a square. But in the lower left corner, there's a space. And this represents flowing water, streams, rivers, springs, flowing water. The final Mem is closed. It's a closed square. This represents subterranean waters, ones that are more hidden, from which springs come from, which turn into rivers, which turn into lakes, which turn into seas, which turn into oceans. And it's also what's called the Tehom, the abyss, that the underground water, like when people dig a well, they are accessing the lower waters, the closed Mem. So now, by introducing the idea of the letter Mem being the 13th letter, so we see that the repetition of 13 that we've had throughout, the Mispar Katan of Elul is 13, the Mispar Katan of Bina is 13, the 13 Midot of Rachamim, the 13 inner dimensions of the Sefirot, and the 8 of the attributes of compassion. The first letters spell out Nachal, a river. But here we can go even deeper, because the numerical value of Mem equals 40. And this is very, very connected to the 40-day period that we're in now. From Rosh Chodesh Elul till Yom Kippur is 40 days. And these 40 days from Rosh Chodesh Elul to Yom Kippur, so they parallel the third time that Moshe Rabbeinu went up on Mount Sinai. He went up the third time on Rosh Chodesh Elul, and he came down with the second tablets on Yom Kippur. So here, as I said in the beginning, the symbol of water running through Elul, we have to look for it, but it's there. It's like really there. So we have these 40 days. Now I mentioned before that the name of the month Elul is found in an acronym. Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. Spelled the first letters of Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. Spell out Elul, Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. But what many people don't notice are what's called the Sofei Tevot. What's the last letter of these four words of Ani l'dodi v'dodi li? So if we look carefully, the last letter of Ani is a Yud. L'dodi, last letter, a Yud. V'dodi, last letter Yud. Li, Yud. 4 Yuds. 4 times 10 equals 40. So here's a beautiful hint to the 40-day period that we're in now, beginning with Rosh Chodesh Elul to Yom Kippur. Now there's even a further hint, because the last word of this phrase, I am to my beloved and my beloved is to me, is the word li. Li, the lamed equals 30 and the yud equals 10. So this is the 30 is the 30 days of Elul, and the yud is the 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. So this is just a beautiful hint of these 40 days. But let's look at deeper at the connection to water. So we're told that the agency through which in much of Jewish law, ritual and custom, the way we go from a state of impurity to purity is through immersing in a mikvah, a body of water called a mikvah. And we're told that the minimum amount, the measurement that makes a kosher mikvah is what's called 40 sa'ah. A sa'ah, I'm not sure what it is in quarts or gallons or liters, but it's the definition, it's enough for a normal human being to be able to be completely under the water. Because for it to be a kosher immersion, the entire body has to be under the water at the same time. And so 40 sa is considered the minimum amount of water that a body could be completely under water. So here we see a very, very important idea. And we'll add to this is that there are certain times that we use the mikvah. And all of them, though, are what are called transitions. When we go, a man or a woman, from a state of impurity to a state of purity, it's through going to the mikvah. It's the transition from impurity to purity. When a person converts in a halachic way, they must go to the mikvah because they're making a transition from one life to another life. When we buy new vessels that were not made by Jews, we have to dunk them in a mikvah because it's a transition from a foreign source to a vessel that will now be used in the agency of keeping kosher. So all of these have to do with transition. Well, that is what's happening in the month of Elul. We are transitioning from an old year to a new year. And it doesn't happen in a snap of the fingers. We have a whole month to go through this transition. And really the transition is from Rosh Chodesh Elul through Yom Kippur. So this is a very deep understanding of the illusion of water running through this month. It's like spiritually, these 40 days are meant to be as if we are immersed in a mikvah of transition and change and tshuva and introspection and meditation. It's a metaphor of being in a mikvah of transition to a new year, to a new us. We are going to explore much greater this number 40 in Jewish tradition as we go through this mini-series. But for right now, we could see its connection to the month of Elul. Okay, now we are going to add a whole new element here, but it's based on everything that we've said up to now. And that is a very, very important point, is that on Rosh Hashanah, so we look at Rosh Hashanah as the new year. And even in our prayers, we say, this is the birthday of the world. And we talk a lot about creation on Rosh Hashanah. But we know from tradition that Rosh Hashanah is considered the 6th day of creation. The first day of creation is Chaf Hei Elul, the 25th day of Elul. So many people kind of miss this idea. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with thinking of Rosh Hashanah as not just a new year, but new creation, a new us, new energy. But it's really starting in Elul. This point can't be emphasized enough. Creation is happening in Elul. Rosh Hashanah is already the 6th day. And the 2nd day of Rosh Hashanah is the first Shabbat. So what we're going to do now is we're going to connect Elul and creation. And we're going to do it through the number 13 again. 13, as we say, I'm not going to review it again, but we've already discussed 4, 5, 6 different different phenomenon that have the number 13 that we've been investigating. So here, and this is a Torah from Rav Ginsburg, and I just learned it recently. I hadn't learned it before, and I just really took to this idea that he gives over. So first of all, we'll add 2 more 13s here. 13 equals the Gematria of Ahava, love, and Echad, 1. The number 1, but it means unity, union, 1. So everyone brings down that when you put together Ahava and oneness, 13 and 13 equal 26, equals the 4-letter name of God, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. So first, let's look at this word Echad in the Shema. So many of you have the book I wrote on the Shema, where I go through each word of the Shema and give over many, many different kavanot, intentions. So when you get to the word Echad, it's actually brought down in the halacha, the basic Cavana, when we say Echad, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, is by breaking down the word Echad into the 3 letters. The Aleph equals 1, the Chet equals 8, and the Daled equals 4. And so the Kavana is that we should visualize that God who is 1, that's the Aleph, God who is 1, and here we're visualizing God as being transcendent, beyond the beyond. But we know that God is very much in this world. So how does that happen? So you go from the Aleph to the Chet. Chet equals 8. So this basic Kavana is that the one God manifests himself through the 7 heavens to the earth. 7 heavens and the earth equals 8. And it's like a visualization that we imagine, we ourselves are drawing down this transcendent energy of God into the world. And then you get to the Daled, Dalet equals 4. And then when this energy comes down to the earth, then it becomes our mission to spread it to the 4 corners of the world. So this is just a beautiful kavana, a simple kavana to remember. Again, 8 is 7 heavens and the earth. 7 and 1 equals 8. So I'm mentioning this because what Rav Ginsburg does now, he gives us a formula for understanding, we'll call it the inner motivation and the dynamic through which creation comes into being. Through these 3 letters of Aleph, Chet, and Dalet. And this is how he explains it. That the Aleph of Echad is Ahava. The Chet of Echad is Chachma. I'll explain in a second. And the Dalet is Dibur. I'll go back. The Aleph is Ahava, which is love. The Chet is Chachma, which is wisdom. And the Dalet is Dibur, which is speech. So in other words, Rav Ginsburg explains that the initial awakening, motivation, arousal, as it were, within God to create a finite world was love. As simple as it is. Chesed, loving kindness, God's desire to give. That is the point of departure of the creative process. But then what happens? There's this arousal. So every morning we say, Uvetuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit, that in God's goodness, he renews the work of creation every day. And as we've learned many times, it's not just every day, it's every split second, every billionth of a second, the world is being recreated. But how does it happen? So in the morning prayers, we continue. After we say, Tuva machadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit, Ma Rabu Masech Hashem. How wondrous are your deeds, Hashem. Kulam bechachma asita. You made them all in wisdom. So that's the channel. That is the vehicle that takes God's love. That love is translated into, we'll call it the laws of nature. Kulam b'chachma, so you made everything in wisdom. And in science today, science is now looking at the world as not just atoms and molecules and particles. They're seeing much deeper than that now. And they're seeing that everything is encoded information. That coded information is God's wisdom. In every atom, in every particle, in every star, every galaxy, every cell is God's wisdom. Okay, so we have God's love, God's wisdom, which is now bringing the coded information into reality. By Jewish tradition, though, well, how does that coded information actually create the world? Through dibur, through speech. And that's why we have this concept that God created through 10 mamarot, 10 expressions of creation. And God said. So here we have the flow. This is again the word echad. the three letters of Echad. Aleph is Ahava, love. Chet is Chachma, is wisdom. Daled is Dibor, is speech. That is how the creative process happens. That's why every morning we say, Baruch She'amar v'haya olam. Blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. So this was the Torah from Rav Ginsburg. And I just like, wow. But in my own mind, I took it one step further. And that is that on Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur, and already in Elul, the idea is it's a new year. God is recreate, just like God recreates every billionth of a second. But the Arizal says that there is something special that happens on Rosh Hashanah. And that is on Rosh Hashanah, a new energy that has never been in the world before comes into the world. And that's like the definition of a new year. The Ari says quite literally, it's not just the same recycled energy that I'm going to use the word magic, the spiritual inner dynamic of Rosh Hashanah is that there is something new happening. And of course, we want to connect to it. But I realized that, and all of Chassidus gives this over, it's not just that God is recreating the world or even adding newness to the world. The whole idea on a personal level is we have to recreate ourselves every year. That is the process. That is the mikvah that we are in for these 40 days, is we want to recreate ourselves. And that happens through meditation, introspection, accounting, and tikkun, tshuva. But the final product is, in an ideal sense, is a new us. We're giving birth to ourselves. Hopefully in Living with the Times, I'll give over some of the secrets of hearing the shofar. The whole thing of hearing the shofar has to do with giving birth to ourselves again. So here, so then we'll take these three elements of Echad and apply it to ourselves. If we want to reframe our experience, reframe our whole being, is first we have to ignite and arouse love. Love of God, love of other people, love of life, and love of ourselves. Because without love, nothing moves, nothing goes. So that's the first thing. And remember, love, ahava, equals 13. Equals the 13 mirot of rachamim. Equals the 13 inner dimensions of the sfirot. Equals the small number of Elul and Bina. And it's the Mem, and it's water. All of these different things. So we arouse love. And then when we arouse love, we have to employ our chachma to make a new us. In other words, you can't just say to ourselves, I want to be new, I want to be new. Well, how are we going to do that? We have to have a plan. We have to have a practical plan of what are we going to do different? What are we going to add? What can we change? What can we improve? And that comes through intellect. So we take love and we move it into a practical way of becoming a new us. And then Dibur is synonymous with action. Because we say, Baruch She'amar v'ho'olam, blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. It wasn't just idle speech. God's speech is action. God speaks and reality happens. It's the same with us. We have to translate our goals, our New Year's resolutions into actions. So now we get to one more very, very important point, and that is, and this was included in one of the Living of the Times last week, and that is that the letter of this month is a Yud. The Sefer Yetzirah says every month is created through one of the letters. So the month of Elul is through Yud. Yud means hand. Hand is a metaphor for action. The chush, the sense of the month, also in Sefer Yetzirah, every month has a sense. The sense of the month of Elul is action, is asiyah. So both of them go together. It's a month of action. So here, I mentioned that I was going to mention the Yud and Mayim, because here we have Mems on both sides, but in the middle is the Yud. The Yud represents the individual drops of water, just like literally like a Yud looks like a drop of water. Enough drops of water make a stream, a river, an ocean. Ultimately, but they're from drops of water. This is the famous story of Rabbi Akiva, who at age 40, symbolically, and this story has to do with water. At age 40, he was illiterate, and he couldn't really learn the Aleph Bet. It just didn't go in his head. And so he found himself one day by a rock that had a crevice, and there was drops of water from a stream, but it was just drops of water going into this crevice. And he realized those individual drops of water had carved out this crevice in the rock. And he said to himself, can my heart be harder than this rock? That I can't let the water of Torah, we'll get to that, Ein Mayim Ela Torah. I can't be harder than that. And that was his revelation. So it's interesting that he was 40 years old and it had to do with water. So here again, the metaphor of water is also the middle of the waters is action. That's the middle of this month is about action. And so now I'm going to add an incredible Gematria from Rav Ginsburg, that if you take the three words we've been looking at, Echad, Ahava, Chochma, Dibur, love, wisdom, speech. Again, this is the dynamic by which God creates the world. And this is the way that we can recreate our world. If you take those three words, Ahava, Chachma, Dibur, they equal Rachamim. They equal Rachamim. This is called the month of Rachamim. And we're told that Rachamim the 13 midot of Rachamim are envisioned as this flow of water in 13 channels. If anyone's ever seen, usually a waterfall comes down in just one flow. But if you've ever seen, there are many places where you'll have many different channels of the water coming down. So that's the visualization of the 13 midot of Rachamim. So I want to add one more thing at the end here, because we mentioned Kulam b'chachma asita. You made everything in wisdom. So the Zohar says about this, it adds a word at the end. It says, Kulam b'chachma asita dash bebina. You made everything in wisdom in bina. What does that mean? So we're told in the Sfirot that Chachma and Bina are parallel to each other. Chachma is called Abba, father. Bina is called Ima, mother. And the Zohar says there are two beloveds that never part. And from father and mother, the father contributes the seed, and the mother nurtures the seed into a fetus and then into a baby that's born into this world. So when the Zohar says you made everything in wisdom in Bina, so here again, I'm emphasizing that creation is happening in the month of Elul. The 25th of Elul is the first day of creation. And Elul equals Bina. So you made everything in wisdom in Bina, in Elul. So that is just a hint for us that we need to take this in a personal level and really, really put the time and effort into renewing ourselves, into believing, Kavi el Hashem, Chazak v'yametz libecha, have trust in God that we can renew ourselves. We can give birth to ourselves again. We can rise up the ladder. We can add new things to our lives, new perspectives, new horizons. So I bless everyone. I bless everyone to immerse in the 40 days or the 40 sa of the mikvah from Rosh Chodesh Elul through Yom Kippur, and hopefully we'll all come out completely purified.